project. There's around 85,000 parcels within the city limits. That's less than 1% of the parcels that needed to be rezoned or looked at. And I also think that, those numbers go up and down over the years. So I'm not sure that really that variation means much in my mind, but we did want to provide that information to you. Slide. The zoning code updates, there's really kind of 3 levels of categories of things that you'll see when this is brought forward to you in full documents for the next meeting. There's the corrections, which are pretty straightforward, clarifications, and then modifications. Tonight, we're going to talk more about the modifications. Those are kind of the big ticket items, but I don't want to lose track on the importance of clarifications and making staff more efficient in our reviews, and also reducing frustration for applicants. Those are really important, just equally as important in my mind as the modifications. Slide. So the update will include substantive and non-substantive changes. Tonight, as I noted, that we're really focusing on kind of those big ticket items that we've heard frequently discussed in front of the boards and commissions and the city council. Slide.
So chapter 134, kind of the major changes that we're proposing in here. One is we're proposing to eliminate ground floor commercial use requirement and allow residential use on ground floor in CX and MX3 districts. These are more auto-oriented corridors where maybe horizontal mixed use, and within separate buildings on a property may be more suitable than having absolutely mixed use in a vertical format in a building. We are proposing, obviously, to add some uses in different zoning districts. For example, right now in our industrial districts, there's very little retail restaurant use allowed in those. And, we found a couple of examples in the past year where that did create some issues from the old code to the new code. So we are adding some of those retail and restaurant uses back into I-1 districts. We are reformatting our alcoholic liquor, wine, and beer use tables to be more user-friendly. We've expanded the tables basically to identify each district specifically, and then rather than grouping them together in categories, and I think it'll be much easier for people to use. The short-term commercial rental use regulations allowing basically Airbnb as a platform. The state has preempted us in regulation of that, and so code provisions that were in the code are being basically removed from the current code based on the state legislation. Type 3 home occupations, we're expanding that to include some artisan production, so like bottling honey or selling crafts, home bakeries, meal services. The state basically has expanded what type of food production can happen in a non-commercial kitchen in just a single family home. And so we're trying to match up our home occupation regulations with some of that latitude that's been given by the state. We're proposing to amend or create that scoreboards for like high schools and athletic stadiums would be an accessory use rather than currently being designated as a sign in the code. And obviously those scoreboards are intended to be viewed and provide information for the attendees at those events, not to be advertising items towards the general public or the travel ways. And so we think this is a better way to address that issue. As far as signs go, we are proposing to allow type 1 and type 2 zoning exceptions rather than variances for basically relief of all signage requirements. So type 1 and type 2 zoning exceptions obviously have to meet a practical difficulty test versus a hardship test under a variance criteria. So basically the only things that would not be eligible for type 1 and type 2 zoning exceptions would be prohibited signs and sign characteristics, electronic signs, and general advertising signs, so billboards. Everything else, your standard sign for commercial business, basically any of the criteria on those types of uses or signs would be type 1 or type 2 zoning exceptions. We're also proposing to clarify allowed signage for fuel stations. Right now, the canopy signage is counted as part of the building signage, and we're actually establishing a separate category for canopy signage, but we're limiting that signage, the total number and size of signs on a canopy based on street frontage. We're proposing to allow signage for non-conforming uses in all zoning districts. So we've had a couple of examples where people have had to seek a variance from the Board of Adjustment, maybe the U-Haul on Hubble Avenue. Obviously, legal non-conforming use of the property in a flood district, reuse of the Kmart building was not eligible for any signage, had to get a variance from the Board of Adjustment. And so we're proposing to allow a amount of signage for any non-conforming use in all zoning districts. Jason, I'll turn over to chapter 135 for some of the major design changes.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Just to highlight some of the things that we're looking at that'll be brought forward to you. These are kind of design-focused changes here. The first is allowing surface parking, loading bays, and garage entrances on the front facade of a workshop warehouse building as a type 1 design alternative. We've had several cases come forward, and I think you've seen those or may recall seeing those where, it makes sense from the character of the area, or maybe it's a new building on an existing campus. That seems to be a common thread. So we'd like to see that move to type 1, where we could look at it as staff. Then 2 is transparency for side street facades. So this is the situation with, house on a corner lot. The different house types have kind of varying levels of transparency requirements for that side facade. The lowest of the group is the 12%. And we found that when we're using a house type that is at that 12% category, that we've always been able to sort that out with the applicant in the type 1 category of relief, if it, in fact, it even needs relief. So we'd like to reduce those to kind of a standard 12% across all house types. 3 has to do with wrapping of material around a side facade or a rear facade. So the way the language is written now in chapter 135, if, for instance, you have stone on the front, you're supposed to wrap it around the side 20 feet, which is really more intended for a commercial building. We've been waiving that through the design alternative process, but we want to go ahead and codify that as, being more in line with what is expected. The last bullet point here is the ability to waive the basement requirement for the house type A. You've seen several of these where folks have come in to do an addition. They're adding on to a part of the house that maybe was already an addition that was built on slab, doesn't have a basement. It doesn't make sense to require them to build a basement for a sunroom addition, that sort of thing. So we want to make that eligible for type 1. Slide. Garages have been a big ticket item for you, I believe, as a commission. We've had a good number of these requests come forward. As you'll recall, the way the code is written now, we have to do an analysis of the area around the subject property, so 250-foot analysis, and then determine what is the predominant character in that but kind of radius area. And then if it's less than 50% and they still want it waived, it has to come before you. And in cases with infill development, the commission has routinely approved those requests so long as a shed was provided. So we've looked at that pattern and are creating an amendment that reflects that, kind of implementing your policy through action. And are proposing a type 1 design alternative be added that would allow staff to waive the garage requirement if we feel that it's generally in character with the area. So, we're not going to use this for greenfield development, that sort of thing, but for infill projects, the kinds of stuff that you're waiving, we'd like to be able to waive that ourselves and not have to put it on an agenda. Slide. Sidewalks are one of the other things that we've spent a lot of time talking about with the commission. And what we're proposing to do is create a design alternative process, a type 1 design alternative process, where if there are no sidewalks in the area and it's not a priority 1 route based off of move DSM, that staff would be able to waive the priority 2 and 3 sidewalk areas. And then if it happened to be in a priority 1 area, we would come up with a deferral agreement or kind of an escrow program that we've been working with the legal department on in the city manager's office that the applicant would enter into. Again, this is for cases where it makes sense. There's no existing network to connect to, all the same problems that we've been discussing. And we'd have these avenues to help staff be able to take care of that and not bring it forward to the commission. Slide. There's also some cleanup things as it relates to PUDs that I'll touch on here. The first is allowing the final PUD development plan and any amendments to them to be reviewed by staff. Right now, the way the code is written, the final PUD development plan, which is basically fancy talk for a site plan and building elevations, has to have a hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council. And I think off the top of my head, I believe we've had 14 or so of these requests come through since the code was adopted. And so that means, and then often they've come after a conceptual plan amendment. So you'll see the conceptual plan, it'll go to council, they'll approve it. We'll have had all that discussion. And then, a few weeks later, the development plan comes before you and everybody's kind of like, why are we looking at this again? But that is something that we want to address. And so that's part of this amendment process. Bullet points 2 and 3 are really addressing gaps within PUDs that sometimes occur where they don't address signage or they don't provide provisions for fences or lighting. We have historically allowed fencing or signage or lighting in PUDs that don't address that by using the standards that we have on file. So for instance, in a residential PUD, well before this current zoning code, we would look back and we'd say, well, what does our code typically allow for a single family house? And then we would apply that. This codifies that practice. And so it's really just codifying that tradition and bringing it forward. Slide. And then a couple other things that you'll see in the amendments is just a new accessory structure type for bus shelters and automated accessory structures. This is just really addressing something that wasn't in there that we've come across that needs to be addressed. And then also wanted to let everybody know that we are moving our pre-application meetings to virtual unless the applicant requests an in-person meeting. We've found that it works really well for applicants. We've had positive feedback. You don't have to get your consultants to drive to the Armory building and plug the meters, and everybody can, or if you're an out-of-town developer, you can attend the meeting that way. And so we're going to carry that forward, and that does require a code amendment. Slide.
So that's kind of the overview of the major amendments. As we said, in your packet for the June 3rd meeting, you'll be getting a formal list of all the major and minor changes to the code from the legal department, as well as what we propose to do is distribute a PDF copy of the new document for review. And then that was, if once approved by council, that's what would go on our website. Jason touched on it briefly, but this did involve a rebuild of the existing document. Just so you know, there'll be some information in the staff report, but when council approved the first document in October and the 60 days where we had to create all these major amendments, basically the electronic file became no longer editable. So we had to basically create individual files for the changes that were being made. Those had to be printed, then had to be basically manually numbered and inserted to a print copy of the code that council had approved. And then that document was scanned on a copier as a PDF and posted to the website. So warts and all on that document was the best we were able to do to meet the deadline of having a code effective December 16th. So that document that's on our website today still has draft listed on it. We've heard concerns about that from people. We added notes to it that said, final as of, dates, but there's still draft stamps on every page. There are typos and numerous things that are in the document. We are trying to correct all of those things in this document and activate live links in the PDF so that people can move around in the document, which they cannot do today. And it's obviously a more accessible document from a machine reader perspective. So the steps for this project from here on out, obviously we're here tonight on the work session. June 3rd, we're going to ask you to hold a hearing and make a recommendation on the amendments. June 14th would be council setting hearing, and they would hopefully hold their hearing on the 28th. Most of these changes council's aware of and have been supportive of when we've met with them. And so realistically, if council wants to waive second and third readings, this is not like we don't see this as being these being controversial amendments. These are amendments that we've, observed in the last year as causing angst and causing, additional time and time on agendas for the commission and Board of Adjustment. And so we think that these are all substantial improvements to the code. And so we do think it is possible that readings could be waived. Regardless of whenever the third reading is held, the code would become, the interactive code would be on the website about 10 days after that final reading. And then we do expect in the summer, late summer and early fall, to pursue some rezoning of some targeted industrial zoned areas back to residential. We still need to work on new tax abatement standards that have to be adopted still by the end of summer, early fall to go into effect January 1. And then there are also some zoning updates that would go with that. And then we will continue to pursue future amendments to this code. It's a living document, as we said, and there will be additional outreach that we will have on future amendments for the code. So with that, I would like to just open it up and see if there are questions from the commission. I do have a couple questions for you when we're done. So I'll open it back to Dory and the members of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike and Jason. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Well, if you have no questions now, we'll proceed with the Plan and Zoning Commission meeting.
Dory, just one quick thing I just want to add is, so our intent is to distribute to you in your packet the Word files of the lists of major and minor amendments and to the commission. And then we intend to also provide you a link to the PDF, the new PDF of this code, which would have these changes implemented in it. If someone wants a paper copy, we can provide that, but I can't guarantee that that will be provided in the packet next week. We are literally up against a very tight time frame to get all of the revisions and the document rebuilt by next Friday. And so just getting the PDF out is our top priority for next week. But if someone wants a paper copy, please let staff know, and we will figure out a way to get that to you either at the hearing or prior to the hearing. But I would just point out that today, the commissioners don't have a complete copy of the a paper copy of the existing code. All of our staff are using the PDFs online to review projects on a daily basis. And so that truly is our intent, and that's why we want those links to be fixed and activated in this new PDF. So we do think that that will be the best way going forward for everybody to be utilizing the code. So again, if anybody wants a paper copy, if you could send Jason or I an email, and we will work with you to get you a copy. But otherwise, our primary distribution of this will be via an email with a PDF link. Okay.
That's great. On the June 3rd meeting then for the commission hearing, will that be at the beginning of our public hearing portion of the meeting?
I think right now we obviously have some consent agenda items that are preliminarily on there. I think this might be item 5. I think it's the first public hearing, non-consent agenda, but I'd have to confirm that.
Dory, that's the intention, that we would do this up at the top.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
If you have any questions, please email Jason or I, okay? Thank you very much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. And again, I hope everybody's healthy and safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And thanks to all the staff. I know this has been an incredible amount of work and it is truly appreciated. And thanks for making all these clarifications and adjustments for the community. I believe we now have, well, it's not quite 6 p.m. Oh, yes, it is 6 p.m. So I will start the meeting by reading the rules and procedures. The Plan and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission, other than site plans and subdivision plats, unless denials or conditional approvals thereof are appealed. Please contact the City Clerk or Development Services Department staff at 515-689-9485 for details on council hearings. Applicants will be given 10 minutes to present their request, and if applicants wish to share materials not already submitted with the application, please email them to planning@dmgov.org so a staff host may be able to share them on the screen when you present. Proponents and then opponents from the public are then allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Staff has attempted to compile a list of people who would like to speak on each item. Staff will first call on these people and then will open it up to anyone else who wishes to speak. To request to speak during the hearing, please use the raise hand function on Zoom webinar via internet or dial *9 on your phone. Once permission to speak is given, to unmute and mute, dial *6 on your phone. You will be required to give your legal name and address for the record prior to speaking. Also, we ask that you keep your microphones and phones on mute unless you've been given the chance to address the commission by the chair. Applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal if any opponent spoke. All comments are to be germane to the item under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. The hearing will then be closed and the commission will discuss and vote on the issue. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless an individual present or member of the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. The City of Des Moines is pleased to provide accommodations to individuals or groups with disabilities and encourages participation in city government. Please know that typical accommodations may be limited by emergency requirements as issued by the state of Iowa and the City of Des Moines. We now have the minutes or roll call by Tyler.
All right, Abby Chungith.
Here.
Will Page.
Here.
Johnny Alcivar.
Here.
Emily Webb,
Here.
Dory Briles,
Here.
Jan Freed,
Here.
Kayla Bergson,
Here.
Steve Wallace,
Here.
Carolyn Jennison,
Here. Here.
Greg Wattier,
Here.
Greg Jones.
Here.
Currently have 11 members present.
Thank you, Tyler. We'll now have the minutes from the May 6th meeting. If there are no additions or corrections, do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
Dory, this is Jan. I'll move.
Thank you, Jan.
All right, Dory Briles,
Yes.
Jan Freed,
Yes.
Emily Webb,
Abstain.
Johnny Alcivar,
Yes.
Will Page,
Yes.
Abby Chunga,
Yes.
Kayla Bergson,
Yes.
Steve Wallace,
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison,
Yes.
Greg Wattier,
Abstain.
and Greg Jones.
Yes.
That motion carries 10-02.
Thank you, Tyler.
Excuse me, 9-02.
Okay, thank you. We'll now take things a little out of order. We're going to go to the items for continuance first, because we have an item number 4, which is currently on the consent agenda, which to continue to June 17th. That is a request from Zachary Miller and Mason Terwindler for review and approval for a type 2 design alternative for property located at 846 East Broad Street. And that item wishes to be continued to June 17th. Is there a motion to approve moving that to June 17th?
This is Emily Webb. I'll move.
Thank you. And I believe that's the only item for to be moved to June 17th. So we'll have a vote on this.
All right, Greg Jones,
Yes.
Greg Wattier,
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison,
Yes.
Steve Wallace,
Yes.
Kayla Bergson,
Yes.
Abby Chunga,
Yes.
Will Page,
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar,
Yes.
Emily Webb,
Yes.
Dory Briles,
Yes.
and Jan Freed.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Thank you. We have 3 items that wish to be continued to the June 3rd meeting. The first item is item number 9, which is a request from Fairway Stores, Inc. for type 2 design alternatives for property located at 2716 Beaver Avenue and 2723 41st Place to allow redevelopment for a 7,759 square foot storefront type building for limited retail sales use. And I believe the reason, I didn't know, Jason, if you were going to comment on the reason for that continuance.
Sure. Chair, members of the commission, Jason Van Essen with the planning staff. The rezoning that is needed for this to be able to be heard by the commission has not been approved by the council yet. When we set up the agenda originally, we knew that this meeting would occur after the hearing, but the city council elected to continue that hearing. And so the application for a site plan for commercial use of the land is not something that the commission can review at this time because the land is still zoned residentially. So this needs to be continued to the next meeting so we can allow the council to take action. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Is there a motion to continue that item to June 3rd?
Dory, we probably could,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
can we do 9 and 14 together since it's going to June 3rd?
Well, thank you. We'll do that. The other item for continuance is item number 14. It's a request from IPE 1031, REV 353 for property located at 505 Sheridan Avenue. And I believe the reason for that continuance is they needed to do a neighborhood outreach first. So we need a motion to move that to continue.
If I could, Chair, I just want to make sure that we also have a request to continue 15. I didn't know if.
I'm sorry. Yes, that's right.
It's the same situation. Both 14 and 15 weren't able to get their neighborhood notice information out in time for the to be received by the neighbors.
Oh, okay, and that item 15 is a request from Mid-American Energy Company for property located in the vicinity of 2400 East County Line Road. So is there a motion then to move items number 9, 14, and 15 to the June 3rd meeting?
Dory, this is Will Page. I move 9, 14, and 15 to June 3rd, 2021.
Thank you, Will.
All right, Greg Wattier,
Yes.
Greg Jones,
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison,
Yes.
Steve Wallace,
Yes.
Caleb Berkson,
Yes.
Abby Chungeth,
Yes.
Will Page,
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar,
Yes.
Emily Webb,
Yes.
Dory Briles,
Yes.
and Jan Freed.
Yes.
That motion carries 11-0.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the consent part of the agenda. Item number 1 is a request from the ILEX Group, Inc., represented by Ben Schultes, for a review and approval of a preliminary plat on Northridge 8035 Business Park on property located in the vicinity of 4600 East 14th Street. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to pull this item from the consent and have it heard this evening?
You might want to remind them to raise their hand or press star 9.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from the public?
I'm not seeing any hands, Chair.
Okay. Anyone on the commission who wishes to pull that item from consent? Okay, if not, we'll move on to item number 2, which is a request from Zion Capital Group, LLC, for property located at 2453 East Grand Avenue, and that's to rezone the property from an N3C neighborhood district to an RX1 mixed-use district. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to have this item pulled and discussed as part of the public agenda? Then please raise your hand or press star 9.
I see a hand raised from Ryan Campos. So Ryan, just want to clarify that. Yes, I see 2 hands. Okay, we'll go ahead and hear it.
Okay.
But Ryan's the applicant, so I want to give him permission to talk. Ryan, can you unmute yourself? I want to make sure you understand, if it's on the consent agenda, the commission is going to adopt the staff recommendation, which is for approval with some minor conditions. Are you opposed to the conditions? Ryan, do you have the ability to unmute yourself? There's also a phone number that's raised their hand. Ryan, is that you? Use star 6 if you're on the phone. Ryan, are you there? There's a phone that's area code 818. Ryan? Brian, we can't hear you. Looks like you've unmuted yourself, but we can't hear you.
We might want to ask who the individual at 818-741-1088 is.
Yeah, but they have, I think it might be Ryan and they're not speaking, so.
Well, Troy Smith is another person that's involved in this, so he might be also.
Is he on here? Okay.
So.
I see Doug Saltzgaver on here. Doug, I'm giving you permission to talk. Can you unmute yourself and maybe let us know if you would like this item to be heard?
I have no problems with this item.
Do you know if Ryan does, or is he just having technical difficulties?
I don't know.
He doesn't have any issues with it.
Okay. Well, what would you like us to do since he's having technical difficulties? Do you want the item heard, or are you comfortable with it staying on consent?
And now he's got his hand up again.
Ryan? You're unmuted, Ryan, so go ahead and speak if you can. I think we'll have to hear the item without knowing.
Right, but if he wants to speak to it, he also has to figure out how to.
Right, but maybe by that point, of course, this will be the first item we'll discuss. So how about this? Doug, if you're still listening, if you can contact Ryan, give him a call and find out, the chair will move on to the other items, and then we'll come back to this one before we vote on the consent agenda.
Okay, so we will move on to item number 3, request from Joe Harrison for review and approval of a type 2 design alternative for property located at 2500 Thornton Avenue. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to hear this item this evening and have it pulled from the consent agenda? Please raise your hand or press *9.
I'm not seeing anybody other than Ryan from the past items, so I think we're okay on this one.
Okay. Item number 5 then is a request from Terrace Hill 1 LLC, represented by Doug Saltzgaver, for property located at 2525 Grand Avenue to rezone property from RX2 mixed use district to an MX3 mixed use district. Is there anyone in the public who would like to have this item pulled from consent and discussed this evening? Please raise your hand or use the *9 function on your phone.
Not seeing any.
Okay, is there anyone on the commission that wishes to hear this item this evening? If not, item 5 will remain on consent. Item number 6 is a request from Damian Jacinto Sanchez for a type 2 design alternative for property located at 1416 East 36th Court. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to have this item pulled from consent and placed on the public discussion agenda this evening?
Hello?
Ryan, we'll come back to you.
Can you guys hear me now, though?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay.
I'm going to mute you and then we'll get back to you.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right.
Thank you. So if there's nobody from the public who wishes to hear item 6, commissioners, or any of you would like to hear that item? If not, item 6 will remain on consent. The final consent item then is item number 7, a request from Brian Cole for review and approval of a type 2 design alternative for property located at 917 Lewis Avenue. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to have this item pulled from the consent agenda and heard this evening? Anyone on the commission that would like that item pulled?
Madam Chair, this is Johnny Alciva. I just have a question for staff. It appears that this is using the proposed changes that were discussed a few minutes ago. I'm a little confused, so maybe some clarification. Based on that timeline, it appeared that those had not been approved yet. So can somebody clarify how can we use that for this item?
Sure. The reference to the pending amendments are the basis for staff supporting this request, where other requests that have come before you we have not supported. And regardless of our support, the commission has generally been waiving sidewalks where there is no network around them to connect to. And so as staff, we decided to go ahead and recommend approval of this. It's still in front of you because it requires a type 2. Staff can't approve it administratively because the code changes have not happened. Does that make sense?
Yes, thanks, Jason.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
And then do we want to go back and see if Ryan indeed wants to?
Yes, let's hear from Ryan on item number 2.
Yeah, and I want to apologize to Doug Saltzgaber. I thought he had worked on this project, but he's here for a different item. So sorry about that, Doug.
Hey guys, sorry about that. I think I was on the line on a computer and a phone, so I think that was where there was a little bit of a issue trying to actually unmute myself and get myself to speak. But I think we're good. Like I said, we don't. As long as everything's approved, I think we're good with everything as far as the commercial and the residential part. I think we're fine with everything you guys said.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay. Is there anything?
So there was no one else that wished to have that item pulled this evening. Okay, so on the consent agenda, we have item number 1, number 2, number 3, number 5, number 6, and number 7. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move that. Dory, this is Jan.
Thank you, Jan.
All right, Jan Freed.
Hold on, I muted again. Yes.
Thank you. Dory Browse.
Yes.
Emily Webb.
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar.
Yes, and no for number 7.
Okay. Will Page.
Yes.
Abby Chungeth.
Yes.
Caleb Berkson.
Yes.
Steve Wallace.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
Yes.
Greg Wattier.
Yes.
And Greg Jones.
Yes.
So motion carries 11-0 for items 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, and then 10-1 on consent item number 7.
Thank you, Tyler. Now we'll go on to the public hearing items, which will be 8, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So we'll start with item number 8, which is a city-initiated request for the vacation of street and alley right-of-way in the vicinity of Southeast Astor Street and Shaw Street and the vicinity of Southeast 16th Street and Vale Street.
Chair, members of the commission, Jason Van Essen, the planning staff. Let me get my presentation up on the screen for you. Item 8 is continued from the last meeting. You'll recall this is vacations that are needed for the phase 2 of the Municipal Service Center. This is a aerial map identifying the largely undeveloped right-of-way that is being considered. This is the site of the Municipal Service Center. The construction or grading has started. Detention facilities are in close proximity. It actually will be over a lot of this right-of-way. We heard from a neighbor, Dale Jones, who's with us tonight, that owns this parcel. And I think he owns a couple parcels up here as well, about his concern about access to maintaining his fencing. And so the commission continued it and asked that we reach out to engineering and real estate department and discuss the matter with them. And just quickly flip through the slides here. You can see in the updated staff report, we are recommending approval, which we had last time, but this time we've added language requiring an access easement be provided for fence maintenance purposes for Mr. Jones. The land needs to be controlled by the city to allow for the grading, the stormwater maintenance facilities, and any future expansions. And we shouldn't be in a position where we're selling land. I think at the last meeting, we talked to the applicant, or not the applicant, but the neighbor suggested maybe he purchased half of the alley that joins his property. We need to maintain control of that for long-term protection of the city. If there's a future expansions or something along those lines, we don't want to have to buy land back that we've already owned at one time. So that's the reason why we brought forward a recommendation with just an easement. Happy to answer any questions.
If there are no questions from the commission at this time, are there any other speakers who wish to speak in support of item number 8? And if not, are there speakers in opposition to this agenda item this evening? I believe, did Dale Jones wish to speak this evening?
Dale, use the raise hand function, or if you're on a phone, *9. I see him listed, but he hasn't raised his hand. So I did share with him what the recommendation was going to be, and I did provide him a copy of the site plan for the Municipal Service Center so he could understand the long-term grading plans. He has raised his hand, so Dale, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Dale, please state your address, and you will have 5 minutes to speak.
You got something going on here.
Because you're done work on the computer now, so they can hear him, but it's now going to.
Are you there? I think he has.
Yeah, we can hear you, Dale.
How do I turn this off? Are you there?
Yeah, we can hear you, but there's an echo.
Turn off one of your devices if you're, if you're using 2 devices.
Dale, you can go ahead and speak now.
Please unmute yourself if you'd like to speak, Dale.
Are you there?
Yeah, we can hear you, Dale. Can you give us your name and address, please?
Yeah, it's not doing it.
Yeah, we can hear you, Dale.
They're saying they can hear you.
Do it go up here?
We can hear you now, Dale. So please go ahead and give us your name and address.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay. Dale Jones, 3700 Kinsey, Des Moines. The part with the recommendation of the city sounds good, but I kind of have a problem. They only state the property at 1520. I have those other properties on down further at 609 and 613. When they did their demolition stuff, they took down all my fences. They are agreeing to put these all back up, but then I'm still going to need to be able to maintenance them fences. And then there's along the alleyway, the grade of this thing is going from 15 all the way down to, if I ain't mistaken, 9. It just seems like a pretty steep drop for me to be able to maintenance my fences. I don't know if they need to be that close to my fence to be dropping the grade like that, but is there some way that we can at least get the grade to where I'm able to work on my property? Do I need to unmute?
No, we can hear you, Dale. Are you? This is Jason with planning staff. Are you asking a question? I mean, normally this is your opportunity to provide testimony and ask questions, and then once you're done, if the commission would like me to respond to anything, I'd be happy to. But
okay.
So Dale,
those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. And Jason, I would like you to maybe address Dale's questions at this time.
Thanks, Dory. Happy to. I don't know that myself as planning staff or the commission can really address his questions about grading. The project has just started. There is an approved grading plan. I did provide that to him as part of the site plan package that I sent over. That's already, the site plan's been approved. It was actually before the commission. I think it was sometime in 2020. So he needs to coordinate with the project engineer and the contractor. What's out there now may be rough grading. There is a basin that's proposed that'll be fairly close to the alley at this kind of northern quadrant up here. But as I looked at the contours, it looked like it was flat in what would be the alley right away. With regard to the fences that were damaged by the contractor, Dale mentioned this to me. I've passed that on to our engineering staff, but I believe Dale's conversations have been directly with the contractor who in Dale's words, has said that he acknowledged that it was an error. I can't speak to that. I haven't talked to the contractor directly. I've passed the concern on to like I said, to the engineering staff that are overseeing the project. The way the staff recommendation is written, it was addressing his property. That's the junkyard, so to speak, to the south here, and there's fencing along it, and that's what was discussed at the previous meeting. I understand he owns, I think, this parcel. I don't know if you can see my mouse on the screen. I think he owns this parcel up here that has a house on it, and maybe a couple other ones in here. And I believe that's where the fence damage was. If the commission wants to include that, though, an easement for any parcels he owns, that's fine. That could be part of your recommendation. We could add that. I was just trying to address what he pointed out as a concern at the previous meeting.
Thank you, Jason. Also, we need to ask if there are anybody else who wishes to speak on this item this evening.
I don't see any other hands raised. We might remind them to press *6 on their phone or use the raise hand function.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. If there's no other further discussion from the public, we'll close the public hearing and have the commissioners express your thoughts.
Dory, this is Will Page. I have a question of Jason or perhaps Dale Jones. What are the addresses of the properties in question?
My understanding is I'm looking at some notes from when I talked to him, and we can give him permission to speak again. I'll have to do that. But 609 Southeast 15th Court, and then 613. Well, we might actually need to ask him because it was. Dale, can you unmute yourself? I was thinking it was either 617 or 613. If you want to make it simple for the motion, you could just say any parcels that he owns that on Southeast 15th Court that adjoin that alley, we provide a fence easement.
Are you still with me?
Yeah, Dale, what are those addresses?
The addresses I have is 609 Southeast 15th Court, 613 Southeast 15th Court, 627 Southeast 15th Court, and then the 1520 Murray Street.
And right now, because of the removal by the contractor, there are no fences on the three northern parcels, right? Is that correct?
That's right. The city ended up buying the property behind my house down there. So from my understanding, they're going to put fences back up there. And this pond's kind of pretty close to my properties from my understanding of the diaphragm that I got on this. On 609 and 13 and 27.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any other questions, discussion?
Dory, if there are no other questions, I would move staff recommendation also to include 609 Southeast 5th Court, 613, and 627 Southeast 5th Court.
And then I believe he said 1520 Maury?
Yeah, that's included in the staff recommendation.
Okay, that was in there. Okay. Any discussion of the motion? If not, if we could have a vote.
All right, Greg Jones.
Yes.
Greg Wattier.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
Yes.
Steve Wallace.
Yes.
Lisa Howard.
Yes.
Thank you. Kayla Berkson.
Yes.
Abby Chungeth.
Yes.
Will Page.
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar.
Yes.
Emily Webb.
Yes.
Dory Briles.
Yes.
And Jan Freed.
Yes.
The motion carries 12-0.
Thank you, Tyler. I will remind anybody who's listening in this evening that we have already acted on items number 1 through 7, item number 9, item number 14, and 15. So those items have already been dealt with this evening, and we're ready to continue on with item number 10, 11, 12, and 13. So item number 10 is a request from Kyle Essling for review and approval of a type 2 design alternatives for property located at 4194 John Lind Road. And I believe Laura's going to do a presentation for us.
Yes, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, so 4194 John Lind Road is, the applicant is proposing to tear down an existing house and to build a new construction house type D in the N5 district. Here is the map. There's a few things that I would like to point out. So this is located south of Grand, just off of 42nd Street, which is the north-south road that you'll see there. This is a parcel that's about 1/10 of an acre. At some point, it seems that it was probably split off from the adjacent house that faces onto Southwest 42nd Street. The zoning of this particular lot is N5. The zoning of the properties along Southwest 42nd Street are zoned N5. And then as we move to the east, these parcels are zoned N1A. So these would allow for the house type A. Those that are zoned N5 are going to be the house type D, which is what we have for this parcel here. Here's the existing house and the existing site. What I would like to point out is that the existing property line is just about maybe 2 feet from the front of this porch. So the stairs that we are seeing are all constructed within the existing right-of-way. This is looking to the west towards 42nd. So this would be the bungalow, the Craftsman bungalow that this house would have been parceled from. And I do believe that we have that applicant or that neighbor on the call tonight listening in. Again, facing 42nd, just looking to the west. This is the house that is across the street. This is also the N5 zoning with a 1-story ranch. Looking to the east. And that's also a view of John Lind Road looking to the east. And then I do just want to show 2 photos. This is 4001 John Lind Road. And this is 4011 John Lind Road. These are photos that I had pulled from the assessor's site just to highlight that there's a variety of architectural house styles that are existing on John Lind Road. I will zoom in on the house plan, the site plan for you. So the existing house is shown in the shaded area. This is the outline of the existing house here. And then this is the existing garage, which is kind of tucked under at grade. What the applicant is proposing with their new house, with this outline, you'll see that they're looking at a 10.3 foot front yard setback on that. There's about another 19 feet within the right-of-way from the front property line to the curb. So what they're looking at is roughly a 29-foot front setback from the curb. But as we're discussing tonight, that setback that would read as 10.3 feet. Also on this, I would like to point out that we did offer some type 1 relief on this house. In the N5 zoning, we have a minimum of 7 foot with a total of 15 foot for side yard setbacks. We were able to offer a type 1 relief where they can have a 5 foot side yard setback to the east side with 11 feet on the west side. The proposed elevations, colored image. The front-facing garage is a piece that they would be asking for approval on, as well as the clear-story roof. These are both items that would not be allowed in a Type D house that are allowed with the Type A house. We have the elevations, the plans. And you have the staff report with you. I will zoom through. As you know, we are recommending approval of all 6 items. I would like to kind of work through each of these piece by piece. So again, with the attached garage entrance that I had mentioned earlier, the house type D is our most traditional house type. And with that zoning, we wouldn't be able to allow that front-facing garage with a type 1. However, that would be allowed as a by right with a house type A. Same with the permitted roof type. A clear story roof is considered a pitched non-gable roof, and so that wouldn't be allowed with the house type D, but is also allowed with the type A. On the front setback, as I had pointed out on the site plan, the minimum front setback of 25 feet is required for N5. In an N1A, that's at 45 feet. But again, the lot is only 75 feet deep, so that would really be limiting with that. Again, they're asking for a front setback of 10.3 feet. We understand that with the constraints of the lot, that we think that would make sense to push that forward. If they needed to move the house back, then we would be looking at a type 2 for the rear setback. And with the right-of-way on John Lind Road being at 66 feet wide, we feel that that distance of the house from the curb to about 28 feet is appropriate. With the maximum building coverage in the front yard impervious, the goal of the code as we're looking at those is to address stormwater runoff and water quality. In addition to looking at the maximum building coverage in the front yard impervious, we also look at the total impervious surface of the yard. So again, with the constraints of the small lot, they are looking at relief for the maximum building coverage and the front yard impervious being what's allowed, although we were able to provide a type 1 design alternative for the total impervious where they're allowed to have 50%. They were at a total of 55% for the entire lot. And then as pointed out earlier with the sidewalks, we are now taking a look at our priority 2 and priority 3 sidewalk map to make those recommendations. This area is not listed as a priority sidewalk. We recognize there are no sidewalks anywhere on the street. There are some constraints with topography. If a sidewalk was to go in on John Lind Road at some point down the road, it would probably be across the street where the topography is a little bit more flat. So we're also recommending approval for that. I've mentioned those as well. So again, our staff recommendation is approval for all 6 items. We did receive a formal signed letter in opposition from the neighboring property at 4106 John Lind. I do believe that that neighbor is on our call tonight. I had also received 2 emails from neighbors in opposition. One, if you can see my my cursor here, from 2 houses directly to the east, and then also across the street here. And this is just the letter that I have from that neighbor outlining their concerns. Are there any questions for me?
If there are no questions, we'll have the applicant present. Please state your name and address.
If the applicant could go ahead and use the raise hand function to get to the top of the list. There we go. We'll mute you. Go ahead, Kyle, unmute yourself.
Everybody hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, can everybody hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. First, I'd like to thank Laura for her presentation and thank the commission for your time. I just want to start with a little bit of background. I purchased this home in October of 2020. Kind of with the intent of a full renovation to the existing property. And that included raising the height of the second story. The second level of that home has a 6.5 foot vaulted down to 2.5 foot ceiling. The upstairs is quite tight where the bedrooms would be. And then the first floor height is at 7.5 feet. So it's just very tight. I had met with a structural engineer to discuss the possibility of raising these ceilings, as well as the viability to put an addition over the garage. And while on property, the engineer pointed out a few foundation issues, including a cracked footing in the garage, and also determined that there was some bowing timber in the retaining wall in the driveway that was quite concerning. That we felt like we needed to have some concrete in there for proper correction, concrete footing. So with these added expenses, trying to fix the foundation, and then the adjustment to the roof and some of the landscaping out front that would have needed to be fixed, I just felt that the cost was going to be too great to try to renovate this home. So I started to look at the opportunity for some new construction. When I looked at a new construction option, I did realize that the home was built in 1890, and that that's a very old property and possible historic site. Going through the home and going through some of the things that have been done to the home over time, it was fully renovated in the early 90s, and I think it was 1993 there was a full remodel done, and really, I think just the general lack of care for the property over the last few years really diminished any historical value. There's really nothing inside the home that lent itself to that period. And it just didn't feel that I was really losing anything by demoing the home. So when I started to look at the new construction, the goal was to create a dynamic property that adds value to the neighborhood and character to John Lynn Road. Given the rise of construction costs and the idea of starting with a blank lot, I worked tirelessly with my building designer to maximize the lot space while creating a unique design to add to the integrity of the neighborhood. I know that I'm asking for a lot of variances, but in my opinion, some of these are more of a formality with the sidewalk. There isn't a sidewalk current now, and I know looking down the line, as Laura kind of alluded to, at least on our side of the street, it just doesn't lend itself to putting one in there without a massive kind of intrusion in people's yards. So looking at it, I felt like the two most controversial things are the lot setbacks and the maximum building coverage increase. So I knew going into the building, the main challenge was going to be the lot. It is significantly smaller than any other lot south of Grand, and the topography of the lot kind of limits what we can do feasibly for construction. Add to the fact that I am trying to keep as many as the large oak trees on the property as possible. There are some beautiful trees in the area, and we just didn't want to have to take anything out that we didn't have to take out. So we tried to keep it in the constraints of the existing footprint. With the exception of the additional space on the south side, which I figured is really only affecting me because it's in my backyard. We're pretty much staying in that existing footprint. In fact, we're coming off the road even a little bit more. The neighbors to the west already have a two floors above grade view of that home, because that's where it's high on that side. And then the neighbors back to the east have there's some large pine trees that create a really nice level of privacy. And frankly, when you're in the backyard, you can't even really see to their home. There's so many trees there, which is a very nice feature. As I stated before, we did try to stay in the existing footprint. We did push out a little on the back, and we felt like we needed to do that for a functioning 3-bedroom floor plan. With new construction, and like I said, the rising cost, we really needed to increase the size a little bit to get the value out of the new construction. Otherwise, I think the money we put in just wouldn't necessarily be getting it out on the backside of it. So we really had to look at that. As I stated before, the new construction was to create a new home in a very elegant neighborhood. I thought that was, using that existing footprint of the current home would cause the least amount of resistance to the neighborhood. And given the fact that it's been there for decades with no issues, that we could go forward with that. With that being said, I think that's really all I have. Like I said, I appreciate everybody's time. just trying to create a really nice property here that is something I can really enjoy going forward and try to be as good as I can be. And it's just a beautiful neighborhood, and I really think the home that's on it now doesn't do the neighborhood justice, and I'd like to kind of add to that piece of it. But that's all I have. Thank you very much for letting me talk.
Thank you, Kyle. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in support of this request?
Support is.
If you wish to speak in support, please raise your hand. Or is it *6 or 9?
I believe it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute.
That's it. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
If there is no one else who wishes to speak in support of this request, are there speakers this evening who wish to speak in opposition to the request? Please raise your hand or use the *9.
We have Roger here. I'm trying to, it says whenever I try to give Roger permission to speak, it says he's using an older version of Zoom.
So if Roger could use his phone then instead?
You can just
Roger,
you can promote on the panelists if you want.
Well, I see a phone. Let's see if this phone number is Roger first. There's if you're the phone number, holding the phone number is 515-229-9116. Please unmute yourself. This is *6 to unmute yourself and give us your name and address, please. Are you there?
This is Roger Scolton, 4106 John Lynn Road. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Roger. Are you ready to present, Roger?
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Unfortunately, I can't hear you very well, but let me go ahead and try to get started here. I understand that we are, with my spouse, Iris Post, the owners to the east. I do appreciate your time this evening. I think you've all seen our letter. I would comment that we did submit the letter prior to seeing the staff's report. So I'm not going to take everybody's time to go through what we've already covered in the letter, but I think a couple of points I would emphasize here this evening with you. I think one of the major points in our view is it's hard to believe that this unit would originally ever been approved. We're not quite certain how it got approved. It was moved on the site probably over 40 years ago. It was not built there. It wasn't original. This is not an original lot. This is sort of a rather unusual situation with that lot that was carved out from the lot on 42nd Street. But I think part of our point is a past mistake should not be used to justify and expand an existing mistake to allow this kind of a construction. We must confess that we're also disappointed that the report does not address a specific requirement, specifically referring to page 4 of the staff report for the evaluation of the surrounding neighborhood, when there's at least 50% of the developed lots within 250 feet are designed and constructed consistently with proposed, or not, or whether they are, and whether it's directly in adjoining lots or consistent with the alternatives. Now, I think the city staff interpretation of this is that design and construction only goes to the design of the building. I would argue that that should be viewed much broadly and actually looking at the structure and the layout and character of the neighborhood and not just the particular design. Because when you look at it from that standpoint, the volume and the closeness of the street and the mass of this unit in this area is very inconsistent with the other structures on the street. We're also disappointed the staff has justified the setback by only referring to the setback on 42nd Street, the adjoining property to the west, rather than to ours, and not consider the impact on our property. This is going to result in, if you can imagine, you currently have a garage that's at ground level, so is fairly far away from the structure is fairly far away from our property line. You're now moving within 5 feet of building a 2-story plus roof line and a massive extension of the existing structure. So the combination of the mass of this is a major change from the existing structure that's on the building. We do not believe that this kind of an addition and structure is consistent, as I said, with the neighborhood, and therefore we would ask the commission to, oh, I do have one other point, I'm sorry, because it just was learned here tonight, is we never got an explanation as to why the staff is allowing 5 foot on the east, but was requiring 11 foot on the west. It makes no sense. So it's a distinction between this, particularly if they're relying upon the setback on 42nd Street. Why not a wider setback to the west rather than to the east? So that's kind of our basic pitch. Dennis supplemented our written response and would happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Roger. And I get, is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition this evening?
We have a Julie Lynn. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Oh, this is Marshall Lynn, her husband. I live at 4101 John Lind Road. The houses that you have referenced at 4011, that was Hal Newman's house. He at one time owned all of the property from 4101 John Lind clear down to the creek and built his house with the proper setbacks all the way through creating an environment for the neighborhood appropriately setting way back from the street. The house at 4194 has been there since 1890 and has never been in consonance with the whole neighborhood. The houses on the south side of the street have all obliged themselves by the proper setbacks, the city codes, and all properties in this neighborhood have invested great sums of money to improve their properties in accordance with the neighborhood ideals and character and along with the city code. This property that to be improved, it does neither. It doesn't improve the character of the property, of the neighborhood or anything. You drive down John Lind Road to a gracious neighborhood and all of a sudden you come upon this new structure that is not in harmony with anything in the neighborhood. I strongly oppose this new structure and its many exceptions to the building code. Besides that, there was never a meeting of the neighborhood association about this house. The neighborhood association knows nothing about it until we received notification from the city. So the neighborhood never had a chance to really voice an opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Please state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Use the raise hand function or *9 on your phone. I'm not seeing any more hands, Chair.
Thank you. Then the applicant, you have 5 minutes for a rebuttal or to respond to any of the concerns and comments that have been made.
Yeah.
Kyle, yeah, there you
go. So I've got my contractor here, Mark Steffel, and I'm going to let him speak for some of the rebuttal.
So kind of to touch up, hi, I'm Mark.
We need your name and address for the record, please.
Mark Steffel, my address is 1101 64th Street. And just kind of to address some of the concerns from the neighbors, To Roger, the reason why we did the setbacks 5 feet on his side and I think it's 10.5 feet on the other side is we were trying to preserve the oak tree that sits along the west side of the property. You could see it in that photo. If we were to provide equal setbacks, then we would probably have to eliminate that. And our goal is to maintain as many oak trees as we can. And I mean, I can't really go into arguing too much about new construction because there's more and more popping up on south of Grand. To my knowledge, there are 2 that are getting ready to go, one along Foster Drive and one a couple blocks to the south of us. So I guess my point is just, we're trying to add to the neighborhood, just kind of general numbers we've pulled. The average square feet on the road is about 3,196 feet. Currently, this property sits at 800 square feet. Average value in the neighborhood, according to Polk County Assessor, is about $672,000 per property. Ours sits at about 140. So we're just trying to do the best we can with the lot that we have and actually add value to what is a very great neighborhood that we all agree to. So I think that's kind of all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. At this time, our commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
Well, Dory, this is Jan.
Yeah.
I do have a question. I don't know if it's for staff, but how come neighbors were not informed or involved, or why didn't they know about this until recently?
Jan, this is Laura Peters, planning staff. The commission, we do not have a requirement for neighborhood outreach for a site plan review the way that we do for a rezoning. So they would not have been notified through a neighborhood meeting as would be required for a rezoning.
This is Jason. So yeah, that's consistent with all the items that were on tonight's agenda that were type 2 relief requests or site plans.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll now close the public hearing and have our commission deliberate on the item.
Dory, this is Greg Jones. I'll move staff.
Thank you, Greg. Is there discussion in the motion? If there is no discussion, we'll go ahead and have Tyler take the vote.
All right, Abby Shungeth.
No.
Kayla Bergson.
Yes.
Lisa Howard.
Yes.
Steve Wallace.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
No.
Greg Wattier.
Yes.
Greg Jones.
Yes.
Jan Freed.
No.
Dory Briles.
Yes, I'd like to say I really like the fact that they are trying to preserve trees in that area.
Emily Webb.
Yes, and I agree with Dory.
Will Page.
Yes.
So that motion carries 9-3.
Thank you, Tyler. And again, I will remind people we are now ready for item number 11. Anybody that's here for items 9, 14, and 15 were continued to the June 3rd meeting, and items on the consent agenda were approved except for item number 4, which will be continued to June 17th. So now we're ready for item number 11, which is a request from Gorka Brothers, Inc., represented by Shushil Gajmer, regarding the property located at 2829 Easton Boulevard. And I believe Jason is handling this.
Yes, Chair, members of the Commission, Jason Van Essen with the city's planning staff. This aerial identifies the subject property on the southwest corner of the Easton Boulevard and East 29th Street intersection. You can see the existing convenience store building, fuel canopy out towards the corner. Just a few photographs to get you familiar with the site and kind of get a sense for the setting. Proximity to residential. Site sketch submitted by the applicant, generally showing the site. And you received a copy of the staff report in your packet. With these rezoning requests, our first thing that we look at is what does Plan DSM identify for the property in the area? What is the future land use map designation? In this case, the proposed rezoning does require a future land use map amendment, changing the designation from neighborhood mixed use, which is meant for kind of your smaller scale neighborhood services, less, kind of lower capacity collector streets such as Easton, and we need to be amended to a community mixed use designation, which is what you see on Hubble, University Avenue, East 14th Street, some of our more auto dominant areas. That is the designation that you can kind of associate in your mind with that type of development pattern. The applicant is seeking the MX3 zoning to allow the sale of liquor added to the existing wine and beer sales. That they would still need to get a conditional use approval from the Zoning Board of Adjustment, even if the rezoning is required. As staff, we are recommending denial, and it really goes back to that: where does it make sense in the city to have that MX3 zoning and the community mixed use designation? The intent of those, like I said, are really those are both on the future land use map, but also MX3 zoning is more of an auto dominant type zoning district. And we just don't feel that this setting is appropriate for that that type of development, or that kind of intensity of use. So we are recommending denial. This is the response map. Had a couple, 3 written responses in opposition. Response cards. Happy to answer any questions.
If there are no questions for Jason at this time, the applicant can speak now. Please state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes to present. Please raise your hand or *9.
Yeah, go ahead and unmute yourself and give us your name and address, please.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Sushil and my address is 2325 East Plaster Lane. That's my resident address. Okay, unfortunately, my lawyer couldn't attend the meeting today, and he was pretty much following the application closely more than I was. He did inform a couple of days ago, like the rezoning was denied because it was like low traffic area or something like that, and he wasn't thinking it was a valid reason, but plan and commission future, like whatever it is denying the application of the rezoning. But the houses around the property is, most of the houses are like it's single house, but there's like tenant living around those houses. And my lawyer was also thinking was not the valid reason for that, so I don't know why it was really denied. That's my question.
So is that all for your presentation then this evening?
Yes. Okay, my lawyer he was going to present, but unfortunately he couldn't attend the meeting. But I do have all the comments that the resident or the neighborhood made during my neighborhood meeting. I do have the copy of all the people that attended the meeting. And I do have the emails that they wrote me, like when I sent the letter out to the neighborhood. And I do have all the copies of the letters that I sent out to the neighborhood also. I can provide those files if you guys need them. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Sushil. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in support of this item this evening?
Please use the raise hand function or *9 on your phone. I'm not seeing any, Chair.
Okay. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this request? Please raise your hand or use *9.
I'm not seeing any.
Okay. Since we have no other speakers, but no need for a rebuttal, so I think at this point we'll close the public hearing and have the commissioner express your thoughts or questions.
Dory, this is Carolyn.
Yes.
So from a staff perspective, what was the thing that made them deny this, or we're not comfortable?
So if you look at the maybe let me go to the map here.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. So the property right now is zoned MX1 and designated as neighborhood mixed use, which is small scale mixed use development, typically at an intersection. That's designed to serve the immediate needs of the neighborhood. MX1 is kind of your lower intense uses. So it's kind of the mixed MX districts. It's our least intense of the three districts: MX1, MX2, and MX3. MX3 being the most intense of the three, and also being the most flexible in terms of auto dominant uses or more intense uses. And then I don't have a pulled out view of the map, but this, if you look at the area around it, it's a small lot surrounded by single family houses. So the intensity of development and what you would expect for a use in this area is fairly something that correlates more to the MX1 district, which is why it's there. To rezone to MX3 would require a land use plan amendment, an amendment to the community mixed use designation, which is intended for our most intense corridors, like University Avenue, Hubble Avenue, Southeast 14th Street, Fleur, Army Post. And we don't believe that's a character of Easton Boulevard. And so that's the basis of our recommendation. We believe that the planned DSM has the future land use map. The designation that's on the map currently today is what's appropriate for this area. And so we are recommending denial of changing that. And as a result, without the land use map amendment, you can't rezone to MX3, which is, like I said, the most intense of the MX districts.
Okay, so my apologies. So what I understand is what they want to do is actually, they're not changing anything externally, but rather they just want to sell?
They want to add liquor to the mix, but they can't do that in the MX1 district. They have to be zoned MX3.
So it's not changing anything on the exterior character?
No, but you're rezoning the property to MX3, which allows different uses. I think you also have to keep in mind that the sale of liquor is a conditional use process. It's intended to be a use that it's recognized it can be an intense use. And so there has to be a process in place to allow it and review it and be limiting. But like I said, I go back to the basis of our recommendation is the character of the area and whether or not the more intense zoning district makes sense here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jason.
You bet.
this point, are there any other comments or questions? If not, is anyone willing to make a motion at this time?
This is Emily Webb. I'll move staff.
Thank you, Emily. Is there any further discussion on the motion? If not, Tyler, I guess we'll take the vote.
All right. Jan Freed.
Had to get unmute. Yes.
Dory Briles.
Yes.
Emily Webb.
Yes.
Will Page.
Yes.
Abby Shungeth.
Yes.
Kayla Berkson.
Yes.
Lisa Howard.
Yes.
Steve Wallace.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
Yes.
Greg Wattier.
Yes.
And Greg Jones.
Yes.
That motion carries 11-0.
Thank you, Tyler. We're now ready for item number 12, which is a request from On Point Investments, LLC, for property located at 2406 Woodland Avenue to rezone the property from an N5 neighborhood district to an N5-2 neighborhood district. And I believe Kyle is staff presenting.
That's correct. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Kyle Larson, planning staff. This item is 2406 Woodland Avenue. As you can see from the aerial map here, it's located on the south side of Woodland, just west of 24th Street. The area is predominantly low-density residential. You will see that N5 zoning is predominant in this area, except for the P1 to the northeast of the subject property, which is Woodland Cemetery. Here you'll see a photo of the property that was taken earlier this week. Single family house that had a prior conversion that is in need of renovation. Here's another view of the subject property. The applicant has provided some initial plans to staff. We have not completed our review yet of the submittal. Obviously, it's all subject to tonight's action on the land use amendment and the rezoning. With all of our land use amendments and rezonings, we lean heavily upon the recommendations set forth in Plan DSM. The land use change would change the designation of this property from low density residential to medium density residential in a neighborhood node. Staff feels that we should support this this item because it is in a neighborhood node and it is on a neighborhood collector street. The proposed development would be a duplex use and kind of fits that missing middle housing type that is called for within neighborhood nodes in Plan DSM and on neighborhood collector streets. So we do, from a staff perspective, feel that it's appropriate. And our staff recommendation is approval of the rezoning and the land use amendment. We did receive some neighborhood response cards in support and opposition of the project. You'll see the response map here. And then some of the cards from neighbors in support. And then this last one in opposition here. We also did receive some emails from surrounding neighbors as well as a member of the neighborhood association. Those have been provided to you with your staff recommendation. The applicant has provided some response back to the neighborhood association on the comments that were received at the neighborhood meeting. Those are on this slide here. That concludes my presentation from staff. I'll turn it over to the applicant at this time.
Were there any questions for staff?
Yes, Jason, it's Will Page here. I do have a question, Kyle. What would happen if this request were denied?
Kyle, do you want me to answer that?
Sure. Thanks, Jason.
You bet. No problem. So just to remind everybody of a procedure. So, the commission is making a recommendation and they'll be sent on to the city council. The council would, if the commission forwarded a recommendation of denial and the commission or the city council accepted that and moved forward with denial, the applicant would have two opportunities or two paths ahead of him. One would be to use the property as a single family dwelling, one household, which he has zoning rights to do currently. The other would be to seek a use variance from the zoning board of adjustment. If they were able, and he'd have to demonstrate a hardship to the board's satisfaction. So the zoning board adjustment could potentially allow the use through the variance process.
Thank you, Jason, for the clarification.
Yep.
Thank you. Is the applicant present and ready to speak?
Good evening. This is Mitch Caluzzi. I'm representing Jennifer Echterling. We are both officers of this LLC. My address is 2421 High Street, which is just adjacent to this parcel. Again, my name's Mitch Caluzzi. I did forward a quick slideshow over to city staff at the planning email that was requested. I'm not sure if they can display that or if I have permission to share my screen.
I can display that. Kyle, I have it queued up. I didn't know if you saw it or not. Do you have it and want to run it, or would you like me to?
Go ahead, Jason.
All right.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it. If you could throw present up on that, please. Thank you, my friend. So thank you, Commission, for taking the time to hear this evening. The property address, again, is 2406 Woodland Avenue. Next slide, please. We are, I think it's important to provide you a basis of what we are and what we do. So Jennifer, myself, as well as Bob Caluzzi, all live in Woodland Heights. We believe in healing the community by restoring blighted properties, and we've got a track record of quality restoration inside of Woodland Heights. Our vision is to bring back the neighboring of neighborhoods, and we recognize there's a gap of trust between communities and investors. It's our mission to bridge that. We're not like a neighbor, we're actually neighbors to these properties. Next slide, please. So here's just a quick smattering of the projects that we've completed in Woodland Heights. If you could hit the next slide. That gives you a better idea, blows it up a little bit more. Again, I live right there on High Street. You can see in the yellow, just west of 24th Street is the subject property, and then just south of that is my personal residence on High. Next slide, please. We went through a decision-making process. So we've owned this property since 2014. We went through a decision-making process that I've outlined for you. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but we asked the questions. One, are we helping? Are we helping the neighborhood? Will it cause harm to anyone? Does it fit the city proposal and the city vision? Does it support the adjacent neighbors? Does it support the future occupants? And if it's not profitable, which I want everyone to recognize this is not a profitable adventure for us, then what's the motivation? So next slide, please. Our motivation is to change for the better the houses in these neighborhoods. To take the blighted properties, this is again my personal residence, so you can see the before of when we bought it in 14 to what it looks like now. Next slide. my girls play here. I want to make sure that's us down at the park right down the street, and that's my daughter standing on the front porch. I want to make sure that everything we're putting out in these neighborhoods is supportive of both their futures as well as all the other children in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. I'll run through these, but here's just an example of what we've done since we've moved here in 2015. So this was a nuisance project the city had previously had on Linden Street. Next slide. This is a fire damaged property directly across the street from 2406 Woodland that we're speaking of this evening. Next slide. This is a previous rental on 26th Street. We added character to the front of the porch to bring it more in line with what the neighborhood expected, as well as put a reverse gable on the side of the house. You can't see that from this photo, but I promise it's got more character than the box used to. Next slide, please. This was another nuisance property along 26th Street. This is actually Jennifer's personal residence. We demolished the illegal addition that was there, put in a fully permitted renovated addition on the back, which turned into a master suite, and it's a gorgeous house now. Next slide, please. This is another one. This is where my father personally lives. So it's still a work in progress, but you can see the change from what it was with the garbage when we bought it in 2015 to fairly well maintained. Still projects to be done, but overall improving. Next slide, please. This is another one across from Bob's house. This was dilapidated on interior. We replaced majority of the interior studs, et cetera, and put it back out to market. Next slide, please. Another example. Next slide. Another example. Next slide. So we have 3 upcoming projects in Woodland Heights that we currently own and intend to work on this month and the months moving forward. So the house on the bottom is on 28th Street. That had a failed foundation, which we've restored under permit so far. 2415 High Street was owner occupied, but largely a DIY interior project that is on our docket to renovate as well. And then, of course, 2406 Woodland, which we're here for tonight. So I felt like it was relevant to provide the background. We're not an investor coming in this neighborhood trying to push people out of houses or anything like that. We are genuinely living here and trying to make the neighborhood better. Next slide, please. So with that, I think it's important to give a little property history. So we acquired the property in 2014 and had used it as a fourplex all the way through the end of 2019. In 2019, we started liquidating majority of our rental holdings. They felt incongruent with the operation that we wanted to run. This was intended to be fully vacated in 2019 for a pending sale. Unfortunately, the tenant did not move out of Unit 3. The occupant stayed over and leveraged the pandemic to stall his move out. So I do admit that it did not have a rental certificate after November of 2019. The intention was to have them out so that we could renovate it and keep it as an existing fourplex at that time. 2020 COVID eviction moratorium happened, compounded the possession issue that we had. You will, if you pull city records, we did pull permits to do plumbing, but again, we couldn't get any traction going. Fast forward to today's date, we went through our decision-making tree and we said, does a fourplex support what we're trying to do in this neighborhood, both from an investing goal and or what the neighborhood would like to see? And I think it's a resounding no that a fourplex does not support that. And we wanted to align with that mission of adjustment. So I'm asking to downgrade this from its previous use as a fourplex to a 2-family unit. I believe that supports many city initiatives, including pass-through doorways, which this unit had, which Sue-Ann has presented amendments and changes for. I don't know if they're approved yet or not, but I know that was something that we've issued opinions on and stated that we would support. It also eliminates forced air systems like this building previously had, which was another city initiative. And most importantly, it fills the middle housing gap for members of our community. The proposal that we're presenting brings 2 stabilized 3-bedroom units to the neighborhood rather than 4 efficiency units. Next slide, please. This was the existing layout as of March 30th, 2021. So you can see the 4-bedroom or the 4 units set up. First floor had 2 units, second floor had 2 units. You'll see that pass-through doorway, and that 4th unit actually went to the 3rd floor, and that's where a lot of their living room / living quarters were. The other 3 were truly efficiency units. There was no set-aside bedroom. We had a lot of transient type renters. Didn't matter how nice we made the interior. It was difficult giving surrounding conditions and the site plan that we were working with. Next slide, please. So our proposal, it's not very big, so it might be tough to see, but is the first floor is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath unit with a nice walkout deck on the rear. We maintain the original porch structure, so the footprint of this doesn't change whatsoever, minus the decking. But in lieu of the decking that gets added to the rear, we eliminate the current side load staircase to service the secondary unit. The upper unit, there's 2 bedrooms on the second level, and then a 3rd master suite on the 3rd. I do want to point out that we requested a density reduction, and the building permit was issued on 3/31 of 2020. Once we were issued that permit, we did demolish the interior of this building, so it is gutted right now. So that's a piece that we're navigating. That's a screenshot of the issued permit sitting there. Next slide, please. Here's the proposed elevations for the unit. You'll see that we maintain the porch on here. We maintain the brick. We eliminate the doorway to it though. We move both doorways to the left-hand side. The leftmost doorway would go up to the second unit. The rightmost doorway would go to the main unit. Next slide, please. Here's the proposed site plan. I know we're not here to discuss the site plans or ask for this as the staff hasn't fully reviewed it yet, but I do believe that we have a pathway to get parking, at least adequate parking for this site. Consolidated. Right now there's 2 entrances and it's on a gravel driveway. We'd like to get that down to a singular entrance and a obviously concrete drive. We did look at trying to get parking into the rear. There's an abandoned alleyway there's an alleyway that was abandoned, which doesn't, if that existed, it would be possible to potentially put parking in the rear. Without that, we don't have enough side yard to sneak vehicles back there. The site plan doesn't show the topography, but there's a pretty substantial grade change. And there is a neighboring garage right on the property line. Next slide, please. So I just want to reiterate, we physically live in Woodland Heights. We work here. I'm doing this out of a passion for love, but there is no financial way for me to turn this into a single family project. And we're taking a massive financial hit by moving it from the 4-plex it was, largely because it's incongruent with the business model we run, as well as what the neighborhood intentions are. So I'm humbly requesting that we can move forward as a duplex on this unit. I do believe it'll add a lot of value to the neighborhood, and I think it's the best path forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in support of this project? You have 5 minutes. Please state your name and address. Raise your hand or press *9.
I'm not seeing any, Chair.
Okay. Then are there any speakers in opposition? You also would have 5 minutes and need to state your name and address. Please raise your hand or press *9.
We have somebody with the phone number of 515-277-2944. Go ahead and hit *6 to unmute yourself and then give us your name and address, please.
I'm Lila Dozier with the Woodland Heights organization, and I am the committee chair of zoning. Am I being heard?
Yes, Lila.
Okay. I must say before I even start talking, that was an excellent presentation. I'm by Mitch Calusi. It's important to understand the background on this property and why we are here today for the rezoning of 2406 Woodland. I should not, and give you the background. That's not my place. That should be Sue Donovan. But I will just say that as chairperson for the Woodland Heights Organization Zoning Committee, this property, and with all the complaints, has taken and kept me pretty busy for more than a year. To me, before you recommend rezoning, I think it's very important to understand the history of the property, and it should be well understood. The Woodland Heights organization, the WHO, has three major concerns about the possible rezoning. Number one, the current traffic and parking problems because of our high density, that Woodland is only 24 feet wide. It carries over 2,800 cars per day, and there is no available on-street parking at this location. The traffic department is very familiar with this location. We had a traffic study, but the traffic department, and that was Jeff Wiggins, will not comment or get involved until he sees a site plan. Number two, concerns about the streetscape and the approved zoning that could possibly happen. We were concerned as a group because Mitch was right up front with you all and with us that he might have to ask for exceptions at the Board of Adjustment because of the upfront drive and the width as far as no more than one third. It has to meet current building code, so you'd have to ask for exceptions as far as the parking up front and the width and accessibility. So that didn't fit our character plan. Number three, there are people concerned about the upzoning and the possibility that it would erode the homeowners' confidence in the single-family district, and developers will be asking for more upzoning in this same area. We have many, many middle housing opportunities in Woodland Heights. We have, right now, within Woodland Heights, many large apartments, duplexes, and quad conversions. And for the last 30 years, we have been trying to encourage homeownership. And to give an example on that, we have many people, I know of 7 personally, that they took some of the quads and even the duplexes, and with a $20,000 grant from the NFC, they took it back to single-family housing. So our rental right now is in Woodland Heights we are 64% rental. And we need more homeownership opportunities. When we were first designated, we've had 2 plans, 1991 and 2013, and we have made great progress. When we started this program and we were distressed, we had almost 30% in poor or very poor condition. Now we only have 3 houses in our area that are in poor or very poor condition. We've made great progress, and that's a lot of it due to home ownership and individual investment. So we have great concerns there that if we keep putting more and more middle housing in a middle housing area, that's what ruined a lot of these older neighborhoods to begin with, and that's our fear.
Lila,
Yes.
this is the chair, and you have 1 minute left for your comments.
And I think I'm done. That's our concerns. And you did have an email from our president, Bill Kresner, and That's what we voted on at the Woodland Heights meeting, and those are our stated concerns.
Thank you very much, Lila. Are there any other speakers in opposition to the request? Please raise your hand or press *9 on your phone. Do you see any hands?
Not seeing any.
Okay. Are there any other speakers neutral to the request who would like to speak this evening?
Not seeing any hands.
Okay. Are there any questions for city staff before we hear from the applicant again? If not, then applicant, you have 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Lila, I hear your concerns, and I do appreciate them as a neighbor. Traffic and parking along Woodland is an issue. It has been an issue with this property, and the condition of this property has been an issue. It's been heavy on my heart, and this is why we're trying to get it adjusted. As the previous condition allowed, if that conversion if that fourplex conversion maintained, I don't see a way to solve that long-term or short-term. So this is genuinely my attempt to solve it and still maintain some level of feasibility. I understand the upzoning erosion, but keep in mind, we are taking off what was 4 units. We're taking 2 units away from what it was a year ago. I do acknowledge that the November timeframe lapsed after the 1 year. I recognize this, and I don't want to make an argument for a continued use, but I think we all can acknowledge that COVID was challenging. Rental of moratorium, the eviction on moratoriums was challenging, and we were faced with conditions well outside of my control. And imposed by federal and state governments. So I think that this duplex is a very reasonable middle ground, and I hope to prove that long term to everybody.
Are you done with your comments then?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. At this time, then, we'll close the public hearing and have time for the commissioners to deliberate.
Dory, this is Will Page, and I guess I have a question for staff. If this is approved tonight, the zoning change, will the site plan come back to the commission for review?
I would anticipate that it will. We just got that sketch that Kyle showed you in his presentation this afternoon, so we haven't had time to really fully vet it. In glancing at it, I expect that there'll need to be some type 2 relief for the parking that's proposed that would need to come before the commission. But without doing a full review, I can't guarantee that would need to come before the commission. But it's highly likely based off of what we've seen so far.
Would the neighborhood association have the ability to comment on it?
Yeah, we would send out notice, just like we do for all of the site plan cases with the type 2 relief. So everybody within 250 feet and the neighborhood association would be sent a notice that in 10 days in advance of the hearing.
Madam Chair, this is Greg Wattier. I just want to add a few thoughts, partly to break the silence and partly just to see if there's any conversation. I think I'm going to be in support of the applicant's request. I believe that making progress in these neighborhoods is about taking steps not only forward, but also finding compromise solutions. I think they have apparently a proven track record of enhancing properties. I was very happy to hear the lady from the neighborhood that said they're down to 3 properties or something that are nuisances, and that's fantastic. And I also believe that going from a 4 to a 2 is reasonable. And I understand the concept of having as many owner-occupied single-family homes as we can. I understand that concept, but I also think there's room for rental properties and room for duplexes. So I'm going to be in support of the applicant's request.
Thank you, Greg. This is Story, and I would echo everything you just said.
This is Emily Webb, and I also agree with that position and would entertain a motion to the same.
Any discussion on the motion then for approval of staff? If no further discussion from the commission, we'll take the vote.
All right, Greg Jones.
Yes.
Greg Wattier.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
Yes.
Steve Wallace.
Yes.
Thank you. Lisa Howard.
Yes.
Kayla Bergson.
Yes.
Abby Chunga.
Yes.
Will Page.
No.
Emily Webb.
Yes.
Dory Briles.
Yes.
And Jan Freed.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-1.
Thank you, Tyler. Now for our final item of the evening is item number 13, which is a request from Greg Lorang and Elisa Ciranota for property located at 1235 43rd Street to rezone the property from N5 Neighborhood District to N5-2 Neighborhood District. And I believe Anu is going to be doing the staff presentation.
That is correct. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the Commission and everyone attending the meeting tonight. This is Anupreet Minhas, City Planner with the City of Des Moines Planning Department. The item on the agenda that's in front of you right now, as Madam Chair mentioned, is a consideration for rezoning of the property at 1235 43rd Street from N5 to N5-2. Slightly similar in terms of action that you just considered, but the nature of what the applicant is planning to do with the property is slightly different. The property itself is located in Waveland Park neighborhood, and it is also within 250 feet of Drake neighborhoods. Both the neighborhoods were notified of this rezoning action. It's located on the east side of 43rd Street, just north of University Avenue. N5 district zoning predominantly in the area, but the property also lies within a community node that you can't see on this one, but the community node sort of extends around in this rough region. The property also is situated within the Franklin Area Special Investment District. It's a few site photos for you. That's your subject property. There's an existing garage located at the back of the property with a driveway going from 43rd Street towards the back. Another shot from the front of the house, again from 43rd Street. A slight close-up of the garage because the applicant, as you will see later, it has the intent of requesting this rezoning is to allow construction of a garage with an office sort of space over it, and also an AHU or an accessory household unit at the back of that garage. So assuming this rezoning goes through tonight, we would look at the proposal once the applicant has submitted that, and this driveway would go into that rough proposal that we have seen in terms of a sort of contextual sort of drawing from the applicant. I just included the snapshot. This is the property located just south of the subject side. This is the driveway for the subject side. This house has also a garage with what looks like a loft-like structure on the top. I did not come across a rental certificate on the property, so I am assuming that it is probably used for family or personal use by the property. The applicant has submitted the application form and the letter that was submitted by the applicant with the rezoning application indicates the intent to construct an AHU or an accessory housing unit, as I said, with a garage and a home office addition on the site. At this point, I will refrain from getting into the details of the exact location or design of the AHU because that is not what we and you are looking at tonight or reviewing tonight. The request in front of you tonight is simply to consider rezoning it to an N52, which would allow a 2-household unit on that property instead of a single family. The actual design would be reviewed separately later if at all the rezoning is approved tonight. And at that time, if it is a proposed accessory household unit, then it would be reviewed for conformance with the regulations laid out in Chapter 135, where it would need to meet requirements of house type D, which is allowed in an N5 district. You have the staff report in your packets. The staff has analyzed the project submitted in light of the intent and requirements of the zoning code. One of the things I wanted to quickly point out, there are 2 corrections in the staff report, and I can go through them as we are going down. But again, as mentioned previously in the other zoning cases that you heard tonight, one of the main criteria, one of the main things that staff looks for is conformance with the plan DSM, creating a tomorrow plan land use designation. In this case, currently it is zoned as a low density residential district within a community node. Given that the applicant is proposing to change it to an N52 for a 2-household unit, that would require change of the plan DSM classification to a low medium density residential unit, residential district. The community node would not change, that stays in place. The few things that the staff did sort of review in this case was looking at the intent of Plan DSM to increase diversity of housing types that caters to all residents within the city, different income groups, different housing choices, different family structures. So looking at that goal and intent, this proposal would meet that intent and goal of Plan DSM. We also analyzed it for what's written in the Franklin area special investment district, which also calls out to increasing housing type diversity in the neighborhood and in the area. One of the other things that was also brought forth during this discussion was that Invest DSM, which is the entity that's been put in place to implement the special investment district goals, has expressed in, I think they are working with the applicant to put together a grant, assuming the rezoning goes through and an AHU is allowed. Invest DSM would partner with the applicant to provide a grant for that construction. I had a discussion with Amber at Invest DSM. I haven't received a letter from them, but they are in support of this rezoning request. The other piece also that was considered was just that the community node talks about having residential development that could include medium and high densities. So this request would also be consistent with what's allowed in a community node. Staff is recommending approval. The two corrections that I mentioned earlier that would be required is, if you look at page 3, it states that the N52 district allows for 1 and 2 household dwellings that are in accordance with either house type B and C. It should be just house type D that's allowed in N5. The same house type D would be allowed for an N52 district as well. The second correction is part A of that staff recommendation. Staff, in this case, is recommending that N52 district be found in conformance with Plan DSM classification, and staff is also recommending approval of the other two, which is approval of amendment to the Plan DSM, creating a tomorrow plan, as well as approval of the rezoning from N5 to N52 neighborhood district. We did receive several comment cards in support of the rezoning. And we also received one letter that was signed and attested that is not in support of the rezoning. I'm going to quickly summarize this letter. This is from the neighbor who is situated immediately north to the subject property. And the few concerns that were kind of brought up was that the proposed AHU would decrease the desirability of the neighborhood, would impact the property values in the area negatively. And also, I think there were some concerns made for what the building coverage and impervious area coverage would result in case that garage plus the AHU is put in place, and how that might impact drainage in the area. At this point, we have no known drainage issues that I'm aware of. But that was one of the things mentioned by the letter. The third thing was also, I believe, is concerned that the AHU might be converted to a rental unit sometime in the future, and that might have a negative impact on the area as well. Here's the consent map. That's the property, located north, which is against it. The applicant also conducted a sort of a virtual outreach by sending out an email to all neighbors back in March, and he has provided a summary of that neighborhood outreach. In that neighborhood outreach, in addition to some of these cards that you're seeing, there were at least 2 more property owners that had supported the rezoning, and 1 that was in opposition. But since neither of them have been signed or sent as a comment card, they do not show up on the consent map. That's kind of all I have for you. I know the applicant as well as some of the neighbors are present today and might be willing to talk about it, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have for me.
Thank you, Anu. Commissioners, do you have any questions at this time? If no questions at this.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
This is Greg Wattier. Anu, maybe you said it and I missed it, but did you by chance, or do you have the ability to tell us, I live probably 2 blocks from this house, and I know there are other accessory dwellings in this neighborhood. Do you have any sense of that number or of that or not?
You know, unfortunately, that would have been good research to do, but I don't think I have that in front of me.
Okay.
My
great.
apologies.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg. If there are no further questions, we'll hear from the applicant at this time. Please state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Hello, thank you. My name is Greg Lorang. I am the resident at 1235 43rd Street. Thank you again for holding this meeting. I know it's getting late, so I won't take up the entire time. The reason for the rezoning request is to build an ADU. We want to provide a sort of a single level home for my mother to live in for the foreseeable future. Invest DSM and Plan DSM programs are one of the primary reasons we decided to go forward with the project. We think that we love the neighborhood and think that some mixed use would be very, very beneficial to property values, to general use in the area, and we think that certainly we can respect some of the disagreements from some of our neighbors. To be honest, quite shocking to see that the Dardens are requesting that we not move forward with this project, considering that they don't live there for probably 11 months of the year. They are not there. But certainly we want to maintain the feel of the neighborhood, and we'll continue to do that through our design process, taking cues from the current structure to put them there. But certainly the idea is not to create any sort of obnoxious building in the neighborhood. We want to create a functional location. The mention of the office space above certainly would raise the height of the building, but we believe it should only be maybe a story and a half. This is not going to be a very disruptive physically building. Certainly the construction, I think, can be a problem, but no, thank you for your time, and we certainly hope to move forward with the project.
Thank you. Are there any other people who wish to speak in support of the request?
Steve, we have you unmuted. Or are you wishing to speak in support? Or are you just offering to help Greg with his presentation? I wasn't sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair and Commission. I just want to add a couple things in support of this. Steve Wilkie Shapiro, 3134 Cottage Grove Avenue. I am the architect on the project, and as we're excited to present it to you as a demonstration of how creative housing solutions can support diverse living arrangements. In this case, a multi-generational family, but also as it relates to people with accessibility or other needs living independently, with support from family nearby, potential for remote work and creative studio space. And we're super excited that this is we believe one of the first new detached accessory household unit projects to be constructed under the new zoning ordinance. In terms of the design, I would be happy to just briefly show it on the screen to kind of demonstrate what we're proposing. But in general, care has been taken in development of the concept to remain secondary to the main home in overall massing as viewed from the street. Indeed, the footprint of the garage is actually substantially the same as the existing garage, and then the accessory household unit is pushed towards the back of the property, kind of attached to the back side of the garage, so it doesn't change the underlying massing from the street. Again, we're taking care to align the design with the general character and form of the primary structure, and it's actually approximately the same scale as the accessory garage structure immediately adjacent. I think that's so. I think that's just kind of. I just wanted to add a little bit about sort of the design intent here, even though I know that's not up for review as part of this. But fundamentally, what we're doing is staying with and supporting the intent of the zoning ordinance and the Plan DSM overlying goals. So thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions relating to the design portion if you have them.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions at this time? If not, are there any speakers who wish to speak against this request this evening? We'll
Chair,
have 5 minutes.
I think we might have one more in support.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead and speak, please. Give us your name and address. Ty? Are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. My name is Ty Luong. I live at 1242 42nd Street, which is kitty corner to the backyard for Greg and Alyssa. And I just want to throw my support behind it. I'm also joined by my partner here, Jillian Traskis, and she is also in support of this ADU. Even though we've lived here for a few years, we've never actually been able to meet Greg and Alyssa, but we were quite delighted to hear that they wanted to add an ADU to their property as a dwelling for their mother who's aging, as I understand it. We were delighted to see that there would be some diversity in architecture, and knowing that there are other ADUs in the neighborhood, we don't find it incongruous to the layout or the feel of the neighborhood. And I also would like to voice my surprise also that our backyard neighbor would object to this, considering they don't actually live here. And you know, I want to support Greg and Alyssa, who actually do live in this neighborhood, to further live in this neighborhood for many years to come. And I think that could be helped by an ADU for their mother. I guess that's all I really wanted to add, but I really think this is a great idea, and I'm totally supportive of it.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, are there any other speakers who wish to speak in support?
I'm not seeing any, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Now, opportunity for anyone who wishes to speak in opposition. Please raise your hand or press *9. You'll have 5 minutes.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Josh.
Hi, this is actually Kelly Bronsink. I live at 1249 43rd Street. We are in opposition of this addition. First of all, I'd like to address the comment that was made about Mr. and Mrs. Darden. Mr. and Mrs. Darden do currently not live all the time in their home, but within the next year will be living here full time. And they have a vested interest in this property. We as well, we enjoy our backyard very much. We enjoy our neighborhood very much. But my biggest concern, and I believe it's Mrs. Darden's as well, is that the AHU will take up more of the property than is allowed by zoning. And that's a very big concern. We are not in favor of having a big construction project in our neighborhood. And there are other places, other ways that this could be done that isn't quite as large. So that would be our opposing comments. I have sent a letter into P&Z. I don't know why it wasn't put with the packet. But we, after talking to an attorney, we feel that it would reduce our property value and not be in accordance with the way that we like our neighborhood to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers who wish to oppose this request this evening?
Donna, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I hadn't intended to speak because I have some issues with my voice, but hopefully you'll understand me. It's interesting to meet the folks that are directly behind us. Our property is 1243 43rd Street in Des Moines, and we have been there a lot more than 1 month of the year. Just to clarify, pre-COVID-19, we have had a lot of illness and a lot of restrictions from where we're finishing up towards retirement before we could move as planned, which was supposed to be in 2020. That didn't happen. But meanwhile, we do spend a lot of time there in normal years, coming 3 times a month sometimes, and spending a total of half the month between those visits. And so we do have a vested interest because this is going to be our retirement home, which is right around the corner. And so it's not like we bought it just to have it temporarily and then sell it. But we love the neighborhood and the character of it, and hope that when the plans are submitted that we will have a chance to look at them more closely. And we still feel that this could change the character of the neighborhood. And I wanted to mention that I did look carefully at the aerial view that was included in our materials. And Anouk was asked the question if she knew how many additional dwelling units were in the area. And I looked at that map in color in the assessment records, and it doesn't look like there are any larger additional dwelling units in the area. And I also don't know if Waveland Park Neighborhood Association had a chance to address this request or reply or anything. We're not a member of that yet because we're intending to be there soon. But anyway, I just wanted to state those things and hope that we will be able to meet the backdoor neighbors who think we're not there, and kind of hope that that will be very soon with the relaxing of all the restrictions coming out of some bad health times. So thank you very much for the chance, and we respectfully request that this be denied.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this request? Please raise your hand or press *9 on your phone. If there are no others who wish to speak against this, commissioners, do you have any questions for staff at this time? We can then move to the applicant's rebuttal. You'll have 5 minutes for any closing statements. Does the applicant wish to speak again?
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Greg.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Thank you. So thank you for everyone voicing support and voicing their concerns or detraction. Really, again, I just want to reiterate that our intention for this project is to create a place for a multi-generational family to exist. My brother lives on just on the other side of Kingman, maybe about 2 blocks away. Currently, my mother is on 40th Street, just east of us in the Drake neighborhood, but she will be coming here. The idea, again, is to provide a place for our growing family. My wife is pregnant. We're having another little boy in July, and certainly the part of the plan is to create the office space above the garage to provide myself with a safe place to work and to open up some additional space in the main home for the growing family. But certainly the single level living space for my brother is really the primary concern here. Just want to thank everybody for all of their comments, and thanks to the council for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Well, at this time, we'll close the public hearing and turn it over to the commission for discussion. And you don't all have to speak at once.
Dory, this is Abby. I am in favor of accessory housing units or dwelling units, or I think they're called accessory housing units here. There are several properties around where I live, across the street from me, next door, behind me, that definitely have the potential of having that because they have living spaces above garages, and I don't think that it deflects from the character of their neighborhood at all. And I think it provides an opportunity for, as these owners are doing, providing a living space for a parent or family member. And so I am in support of this.
Thank you, Abby.
Madam Chair, this is Greg Latier. I'm also going to be in support of this rezoning request. While I'm eager to get into the architecture and the massing and the density and the size and all those things, what I understood from Anu is that's coming back to us. We could get into all that then. And I do believe the neighborhood will have an opportunity and the neighbors to comment on that. And that's a good thing. Hopefully this neighbor, if this passes today, this applicant, if it passes today, reaches out and shows them more of what they plan to do, assuming it passes. So I will be in support of this.
Thank you, Greg.
Doris, this is Jan, I'm from staff.
Okay, thank you, Jan. There's a motion to approve staff. Is there any further discussion?
Hi, this is Anu here again. Just wanted to clarify one thing. Greg, this will come back to the commission only. I mean, assuming this rezoning is approved and we then start looking at what the design is proposed. If there are any type 2 design alternatives that are needed, that is the only situation that this would come back to the Plan and Zoning Commission.
If that's the case, Madam Chair and Anu, if I were to request a friendly amendment to Jan's motion that it must come back, can I do that if I would like? And whether or not she accepts it or not, I don't know, but can I?
Yeah, that's a zoning condition that could be applied.
I'd like to offer that, Jan, as a friendly amendment if you're willing to accept.
I'm willing to accept, Greg.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the motion with Greg's amendment. Are we ready to vote?
All right, Jan Freed,
Yes.
Dory Briles,
Yes.
Emily Webb,
Yes.
Will Page,
Yes.
Abby Chungeth,
Yes.
Kayla Bergson,
Yes.
Lisa Howard,
Yes.
Steve Wallace,
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison,
Yes.
Greg Wattier,
Yes.
and Greg Jones.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Thank you, Tyler. That concludes our items on the agenda. I believe Jason had a report to share with us.
As Chairman of the Commission, Jason Vance, Planning Staff, I just wanted to share with the Commission that we are not going to be meeting in person until August. I think at a previous meeting I had mentioned it was looking like we would start in July. And the reason for that is that the city is in the process of trying to acquire the types of equipment we would need to do hybrid meetings. So basically we'd be in person, but if somebody needed or wanted to participate electronically, they'd be able to do so. So that is causing a delay. So I'll follow up once that's all been firmed up and we have actual dates picked out, but just wanted to bring that to your attention as you plan ahead. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Any other reports? If not, thank you everyone for your time this evening, and thanks again to the staff for what started as kind of a complicated meeting, and we will see you again then on June 3rd.